How's it going, guys? I'm back again with another one of these game room updates where I'm going to tell you about, how I hook things up and my general game room setup. I've done these before. I've done one in 2016, and this is an update to that. Now, the reason I do these is because often in comments and I get emails from people that say, how do you record the gameplay? And I'm always trying to make improvements. I've talked about it before, but I've made some major improvements now. I just want to give you guys an update. So the major update and the main thing that I want to tell you is that all my consoles before were hooked up with composite AV cables. And now I finally made the upgrade to RGB. And right here, this is an RGB TV. It's the kind of thing you might want to play retro games on because it makes the game, it makes it look really, really nice, basically. You get a really nice signal. But let's talk more about it. So here we are on the back side of the TV, and as you can see, TV is RGB, red, green, and blue, and this now hooks into, if we follow this along, it actually hooks into this, which is pretty awesome. This is a Scart switcher. It's a G-Scart. And the deal with this is basically all the consoles hook into this, where it used to just be, the consoles would be all AV. Oh, I've gotten rid of that. And I had them all going into that AV switch box. That's totally gone now. Now I've made the upgrade. So, again, the reason you would want to do this is because it makes the game footage look a lot better, and again, it's also ideal to have it on a nice display as well. So how is the game even getting onto the TV, right? So basically, like I said, the Super Nintendo, the Saturn, all the different systems are going in here. Then coming out of that, they come out of this wire, and then they go along and they go into the TV with the RGB. So that's how the game is getting onto the TV. Now what about audio? Right here, this is the audio, which goes into two speakers. You see one of my speakers is there, and the other one is right there. So have those turned on. That's how I get my sound. And what else? So this right here is the main out from the G-Scart. But where does this go? So this is where it gets more interesting. So this comes out, and it goes into the front of the FrameMeister. And so how does it get out of the FrameMeister? Basically, there is an HDMI here, and it comes out, and essentially that ends up going into the game capture device, your game capture device. Now, from there, game capture comes along, and where does it go? It goes into the TV. Actually, that wasn't quite right. It goes into the TV, into my HDMI 2, so that the game can appear on this television. And this one comes out, and it comes around, and it goes down into the PC down there. A little hard to show, but basically that's what's going on. So essentially, it's going from the FrameMeister to the game capture. One part of the game capture is going into the television, and the other one's going into the PC. So, that's so I can see it on the TV, and the other way is so that I can record the gameplay. So let's go on to the computer. So there I have the Super Nintendo. It's turned on, and basically, it runs through the G-Scart, goes into the FrameMeister, then it goes into the game capture, and that's how it ends up going onto the computer screen. And that's how I record the gameplay. Now, people are always asking about this, so I'm going to try to answer. I use XSplit, and we used to record everything on DVDs, on discs, like all the old Nerd episodes. But the problem with that was everything was 60 frames per second. Or, I'm sorry, all that old footage was 30 frames per second when we were recording on DVDs. But, these systems, like NES and stuff, output at 60 frames per second. So by using the PC and the FrameMeister and all these gadgets, we're able to record now at 60 frames per second, which is how you want it. So when you see my playthroughs and episodes that we record of James and Mike Monday at my place, we're recording at 60 frames per second. So by recording the gameplay at 60 frames per second, now instead of 30 frames per second, the footage looks better for you guys when you're watching. And on my end, the game looks better when I'm sitting here playing it because I'm playing it on a nice RGB monitor. So I think that this is probably about as good as it's gonna get. Another thing I have to mention is my Turbo Duo, and this used to piss me off. See how this fits in this cubby hole? Well, it didn't used to because on the side the AV used to stick out, and I wouldn't be able to put it. I wouldn't be able to put it into the cubby hole. But now you see the RGB is going into the back of the console now. If you can even see that right here, and coming out from there, and then going right there into the G Scart. So that's a huge improvement as well. Now, the newest addition to the madness is this bad boy right here. Here's my Intellivision 2. But what's interesting about it? That's right, folks. You've got an RGB modded Intellivision 2. Because, everybody needs to have their Intellivision 2 RGB modded. No, this is the example of overkill. But, Ryan recently said to me, he's like, I'll accept the Intellivision, but Mike, you've gone one step too far when you get your Pioneer Laser Active done with RGB. I haven't done it yet, but getting there. And this is an older system, and I think it's cool, but while a lot of people might not be interested in having your Intellivision games look pristine, what you guys might be a little more interested in, because I'm trying to make everything as awesome as I can, this is my original Jungle Green N64, but the difference is now we have this deal going on to where the games don't have to look like shit, because now we have, if I can get this out, now we have HDMI for the N64, which is pretty awesome, because the N64, watching it on newer big screen like LCD, I have like a 65-inch television. It looks like shit, with the way it used to be. But now with HDMI, it looks great. So that's another big improvement that I really like. But as you can tell by this big mess of wires, there's a lot more that goes into this than I've even gotten to. Another thing is that not all of the systems, can be done through RGB. So the ones that can be done are, what do we got here? Genesis, Neo Geo, NES, SNES, Saturn, Turbo Duo, but not all the systems, can be RGB. So we have other systems here, like, PlayStation 2, and I wanted to have the PlayStation 2 footage as good as possible as well. And other systems, such as, what about Xbox? I have my Xbox down here, and it used to be AV, like everything else, and now my Xbox, I have component for Xbox, I have component for Wii. Another one that you can't do RGB for is the 3DO. So how do I handle that? So it's because I don't, here's the AV, which I used to do it that way, but now I have it coming out of this, and it's going into S-Video. If I can get this to be not so blurry. It's going into S-Video on the back of the new monitor, and then coming out from that, going into the FrameMeister. So let's travel along this wire here. Here we go. Goes along there, and it goes right there into the front of the FrameMeister. Let me get a little light on the subject. These are very hard to film but right there, that is going into the S-Video on the front of the FrameMeister. So that's how I'm doing 3DO. So anyway, figuring all this out was obviously, look at this is insane. But figuring all this out definitely took a long time to get everything, updated to RGB. But, the question still remains, is it worth it? And I think that goes to personal preference and what you're doing with it. Honestly, I think you're fine if you just have AV. I played video games my whole life with just AV, and love them just as much then as I do now. So it's nice to, be able to have the games look as good as they possibly can. But I think it's a little bit overkill. This is not something that everybody needs to be doing. But if you're really, really, really into, the quality and the picture quality, and if you game a lot, if you're gaming every day, what you might want to do is think about just getting maybe your favorite system upgraded to, you know, RGB. Like maybe if you play a lot of Super Nintendo, just do that one, I'd say. To do them to as many consoles as I've done it to, it is kind of nuts. But we all know that, I mean, if you look right here, I think you guys can tell that I'm clearly have fucking mental problems. But yeah, this is overkill. I don't think anybody needs to be doing this, really. But it does. I will say it does make the games look better. Especially, I noticed the most difference with SNES and Sega Genesis. Like, for example, I remember James and I did a James and Mike Monday of Aladdin, and I think we recorded that AV, and then I played it with RGB right after that, and it was noticeably. It looked much better on Sega Genesis. So I would say if there's one to really do it for, it's Sega Genesis, because it looks Sega Genesis looks way better RGB. But anyway, so that's my general thoughts on it. I'm glad to have finally made the upgrade, and I hope that the quality shows through in the future. So thanks for watching, guys.